Every story is influenced by something that came before. Christopher Booker explored this notion in his 2004 book, The 7 Basic Plots, which posited that all stories can fit into the category of 7 basic plots: overcoming the monster, rags to riches, the quest, voyage and return, comedy, tragedy, and rebirth. You've probably seen this displayed before. Avatar is Pocahontas, is Dances with Wolves, is Heart of Darkness. Some stories contain, or even create, such universally understood tropes, archetypes, and narratives that they become retold through different lenses throughout centuries. And one of these stories is 1939's The Wizard of Oz. It's often cited as one of the most influential movies of all time. The character archetypes shown in this movie, the visuals, the narrative, are indescribably influential. And over 120 years after its inception in the L. Frank Baum novel, it remains one of the most iconic pieces of American media to this day. So I wanted to go through different aspects of this movie, what came before it, what came after it, and explore how pieces of this story pop up in current media more than you think. Each of the characters in this movie are simultaneously so general that they can be seen in a variety of unrelated characters in future movies, and so unique that they became the point of reference for each of their individual traits. For example, the Cowardly Lion's main trait is that he's cowardly. This is an incredibly vague and therefore wide-ranging trait. LeFou, Smee, Tantor, and Sergeant Tibbs are all defined by their cowardice. But the Cowardly Lion's main arc is that he receives courage. So characters like George McFly can be seen as fitting the Cowardly Lion archetype, a story of a character defined by their cowardice who, through the course of the narrative, develops courage and bravery. A number of associations like this can be found in all the characters, starting with the protagonist, Dorothy. Dorothy serves as the audience stand-in. She's the eyes that we see this world through. When we meet her, she's a small-town farm girl. The first thing we learn about Dorothy is that she cares about her dog Toto, so she's immediately endeared to the audience. We see a quick interaction between her and Aunt Em and Uncle Henry, and then we get Somewhere Over the Rainbow. This is basically her I Want song. She wants to travel to a distant, magical land outside of Kansas. This basic structure can be seen in every Disney princess movie. Ariel wants to be part of their world, Snow White wants her prince to come, Mulan wants to bring honor to her family, but the one that most clearly connects to Dorothy is Belle. She, like Dorothy, lives in a little town, a quiet village, where every day is like the one before, and she wants adventure in the great wide somewhere, potentially over the rainbow. There are also character design elements in Belle that are clear references to Dorothy. They share matching blue and white dresses, brown hair tied with a blue bow, and both carry thatched baskets. The Beast even shares physical similarities with the lion. During the makeover scene, he's given spiral curls around his neck and a bow on top of his head, just like the Cowardly Lion. Both stories even have an evil witch, the juvenile character associated with fire, and the mechanical character.
The tinsmith forgot to give me a heart.
Cogsworth, have a heart.
On a broader level, Dorothy can also be seen as a major influence on the Everyman in a Magical World story structure. Coraline, Alice in Wonderland, The Phantom Tollbooth, The Neverending Stories 1 through 3, The Labyrinth, even California Girls are stories where we follow an ordinary person into a magical world. They end up meeting characters, defeating a villain, and using the journey to fulfill a character arc usually related to unhappiness with the world they currently exist in. Like many of the characters in these stories, Dorothy really makes a name for herself in Oz. Her accidental residential homicide of the Wicked Witch of the East gains her instant fame among Glinda and the Munchkins. Then, when she kills the Wicked Witch of the West, she's again praised by the guards. This is a common feature of this type of story. When Harry Potter goes to Hogwarts, he's instantly recognized as the boy who lived. When the Pevensey children go to Narnia, they're recognized as the subjects of a royal prophecy. So Dorothy's legacy is humble everyman made instantly famous by her arrival into a fantasy world. She goes on an adventure which results in her resolving her I Want song at the beginning of the movie, and meeting characters that influence her story. Characters like the Scarecrow. He's the first friend that she meets on the Yellow Brick Road. Quickly upon their meeting, he informs her that he wants a brain, so he joins her on the road to see if the wizard can grant his wish as well. The Scarecrow is characterized by his search for knowledge. Like the other characters, his exterior represents his internal struggle. He's a scarecrow, an object literally built to just stand in a field. He's alone in the field, he's tied to a post, he's made to have things happen to him. But from the get-go, we can see that he's kind of bad at this. He's supposed to ward off the crows, and he can't even do that. When he falls and Dorothy screams, he asks if he scared her, and when she tells him he didn't, he seems kind of upset for not having fulfilled his purpose. But in terms of his story going forward, he's an individual made to be sedentary who goes out of his way to seek knowledge, ending with him receiving a diploma. In this way, remnants of him can be seen in any character who breaks away from their less ideal beginning in pursuit of education. Elle Woods honestly fits into this archetype. Raised by wealthy parents in Los Angeles, studying fashion merchandising, she was made and raised to marry the shallow Warner Huntington III. But she combated her characterization as brainless sorority girl and sought out a law education at Harvard. There are associated characters that take on a more sinister persona too. Scarecrow from Batman seeks knowledge about the drives surrounding fear in order to manipulate people based on their phobias. The Scarecrow's traits of educational pursuit and inability to fulfill his expressed purpose are the ones translated to his future iterations. The idea of a straw man has been seen as far back as Martin Luther to describe an argument lacking substance, so this relates to his desire to fill himself with information. After Dorothy and the Scarecrow get acquainted and take off on the road, they get attacked by the apple trees, which leads her to meet the Tin Man. He laments that he doesn't have a heart. His future influences seem to fit the archetype of a seemingly cold character with emotionality and hopes. He's a mechanical-looking, rusted machine, and he lacks a heart, but he does a pretty good job of feeling emotions. He's thankful when he's given the oil can, he goes to the witch's castle to rescue Dorothy, and he cries when she leaves. He's not an entirely cold-hearted character. He has hopes. He dreams about being able to appreciate love and art, feeling care for small creatures, and finding love. In this way, he reminds me of Wall-E. He was created to pick up trash, but he developed a fascination with human objects and human love by watching old movies and wishing for a similar connection. When Dorothy, the Scarecrow, and the Tin Man head off into the woods, they come across the lion. Dorothy slaps him in the face and he starts crying, at which point he reveals he suffers from extreme cowardice. The lion inspired oxymoronic characters. He's a lion, king of the jungle, animal with no predators, yet he's perennially afraid. Similar characters that come to mind are Ellie from Ice Age, a mammoth, a multiple-ton beast with formidable strength, who sees herself as a possum. She plays dead and is afraid of predators a quarter the size of her. Boog from Open Season is another character that might fit with these traits. He's a bear, but he's directly going against his nature by living with a human as a pet, and he's terrified of predators, specifically the wailing wampus werewolf in one of the sequels. So the Cowardly Lion's characterization tends to center around the conquering of fears and the ironic lack of understanding of one's own power. So these are the 4 protagonists of the film, but no film is complete without an antagonist, and that role is filled by the highly capable Wicked Witch of the West. Every part of Margaret Hamilton's performance is cemented in pop culture and referenced throughout movies, television, and games. The image of a male wizard or a warlock within the cultural consciousness is much more favorable than that of a female witch. When I think of a male witch, I tend to think of Merlin from The Sword and the Stone and Shrek 3. Both versions show a slightly crazy but well-intentioned elderly man with a long beard wearing a dark blue robe. When I think of a female witch, I think of the Wicked Witch, the old witch version of the Evil Queen, and Ava Ernst, beings characterized by their dark color palette, erratic behavior, and association with the crone. This depiction goes back to ostracizing women viewed as outsiders during the Salem witch trials. The pointed black hat was also associated with both Quaker women and Jewish men, 2 groups that were historically targeted by accusations of witchcraft. So that historical depiction of the hat continued into further depictions and gave witches an easily identifiable silhouette. Margaret Hamilton also sports the broom, an object possibly associated with pagan rituals and domesticity.
The broom is a totally domestic object. And so much of what we think of when we think of witchcraft is associated with the domestic sphere, right? You have the cauldron, right? The mortar and pestle, these things that you would find in the home. And that's because when you think of the crimes that witches supposedly committed, many of them were about harm to the domestic sphere, children, food, crops, and so forth.
She also has the evil witch laugh, shown by the evil witch in Snow White. The one aspect of the Wicked Witch that doesn't fit with a predetermined witchy characteristic is the green skin. She doesn't even have green skin in the book which the movie is based on, meaning the green skin was likely added to take advantage of the Technicolor technology. This was common in this movie, like with the ruby slippers being changed from silver to red, and the horse of a different color being added to boast the capabilities of Technicolor. Like I said in the beginning, all of these attributes, with the exception of the green skin, are common pieces of witch imagery. But this film adopts them so well that a kid wearing a pointy hat and a black dress and holding a broom might be assumed to be the Wicked Witch of the West before a general witch. A similar effect is seen with the Disney princesses. Cinderella owns blue, Aurora pink, and Rapunzel purple, to the point that if a child wears a basic princess dress of any of these colors, they might be assumed to be dressing as the princesses. It's a pretty wild consequence of maintaining a position in the cultural zeitgeist for nearly a century. The Wicked Witch has a couple of actions that have maintained strong in the culture, too. At one point in the movie, she rides her broom into the sky and writes, "Surrender, Dorothy." This has been referenced through bridges and bars and bands, oh my. She also has the hourglass counting down the time Dorothy has left to live. The hourglass being used to depict a countdown to death has been used in a number of unique ways. The poster for 127 Hours, a movie about the true story of a man trapped between a boulder, is shaped like an hourglass to communicate that he's running out of time. The logo for Until Dawn, a video game about surviving until dawn while being hunted by wendigos in a remote cabin, is an hourglass shaped by a skull and snow sands falling onto the Washington Lodge. Jedediah from Night at the Museum and Jasmine from Aladdin even get trapped inside an hourglass, counting down their life until the sand fills the bottom. And the final aspect of the Wicked Witch is her association to fire and water. She controls fire, disappears into a burst of fire, throws fireballs at Scarecrow, lights her broom on fire to taunt him, and she ends up being destroyed by a bucket of water. In X-Men The Last Stand, Pyro is defeated by Iceman. Katara extinguishes Zuko's flames with water. The fiery Taka is defeated while surrounded by ocean water. It's a common visual. The Wicked Witch's death is also an example of the powerful villain being destroyed with something simple, current examples being Sauron being defeated by the One Ring, and Pennywise being defeated with insults. On the other end of the spectrum from the villain, we have the adored, the revered, Oz the Great and Powerful. This guy's a con artist. That's his main characterization. The Wizard of Oz originated the phrase man behind the curtain, which is used to describe something that's not what it appears to be because of deceptive tactics. King from One Punch Man fits into this archetype, because he accidentally puts himself into a position of power, and takes credit for acts of heroism performed by other people. Gulliver from Gulliver's Travels is another good example. He stumbles upon the land of the Lilliputians and lies about the fame and status he's achieved at home to win their praise, which eventually leads them to erect a castle for him and basically treat him as their leader.
I'm sorry. You mean to say that you actually died in this shipwreck?
Yeah, I died.
That's what you're telling us, that you actually died.
But I was resuscitated.
It's preposterous.
No, but then I survived.
It's ridiculous.
You and Captain Sparrow defeated the Joker and Magneto.
And you and Jack Bauer had only 24 hours to do it.
I didn't do any of that stuff. I'm just a guy from the mailroom.
But you gave us your word.
I'm sorry. I lied.
Oz's fraudulent nature is solidified again by something he says and something he does. When talking to Dorothy, he tells her that he's a Kansas man himself who floated to Oz in a hot air balloon and was instantly declared a wizard. So he's not a powerful wizard, he's just a dude from Kansas. And at the end of the movie, he gives each member of the group a gift. The gifts the wizard gives are kind of baseless too. He substitutes the Scarecrow's wish for a brain with a diploma. But he's done no schoolwork, and the equation he rattles off after receiving his gift is wrong. He gives the lion who wishes for courage a medal for bravery, and the poor Tin Man gets a clock shaped like a heart. The guys get the wizard gift equivalent of what gets handed out on Halloween when you forget to buy candy. And the only one who truly gets what she wants is Dorothy, and it's not even from the wizard. The character who sends her home is what they imagine the wizard to be, the true positive mentor of the film, Glinda, the Good Witch of the North. She has a couple of interesting characteristics that have trickled down. Her status as a wholly good and gentle mentor can be seen in characters like the fairy godmother and the blue fairy. One of her random powers is that she can travel by bubble. This directly contrasts her with the wizard, posing her bubble transportation as a fully magical ability, unlike the wizard's technologically assembled hot air balloon. The first thing Dorothy sees when she opens the door to Oz is Glinda arriving in a pink bubble. So it's been used to show the advancement or eccentricity of a new society, like in Meet the Robinsons with the bubble travel tubes. Glinda is one of the first depictions in film of a beautiful witch, a point that she makes after revealing,
"Only bad witches are ugly."
Which makes it kinda crazy that she just asked Dorothy,
"Are you a good witch or a bad witch?"
This depiction opens the door for conventionally attractive witches like Sabrina, Wanda, Jennifer, and the Practical Magic Sisters. And the final and most frustrating aspect of Glinda's character was her insistence on knowingly withholding information about how to get home in order to allow the protagonist to figure it out for themselves. Characters like Gusteau from Ratatouille and Mr. Miyagi from Karate Kid exercise this sort of reserved mentor role to allow the character to go through the journey and reach a conclusion on their own. While on the topic of witches, might as well discuss the final one seen in the movie, the Wicked Witch of the East. Well, she's actually barely even seen. We see her lower half. She was smashed by Dorothy's house after the twister, and the only part of her we see is her striped stockings and ruby red slippers. One interesting legacy of this witch is her future status as a Halloween decoration. This likely just came about because every part of this movie's imagery is iconic, and most people decorating for Halloween have a house, which is the only ingredient you need to make a reference to this character. It's also likely a historical reference to stripes being used to identify outcasts, a definition that came to be associated with witches. A case could also be made that this witch haunts the narrative. She's a mysterious figure because we never see her face, and we hear that she's evil, but only in the context of being comparatively less evil than her sister, the Wicked Witch of the West. In Oz, the witch's hatred of Dorothy is also kind of valid. The whole reason she hates Dorothy is because she dropped a house on her sister, and her goal is to get her sister's slippers off of Dorothy, another object that follows her throughout the story and eventually takes her home. So these are all the main characters that Dorothy gets acquainted with in Oz. But there are a couple of characters and objects that have equally wide-ranging legacies. Her dog, Toto, the innocent canine companion being sought after by an evil character, can be seen in movies from 101 Dalmatians to Hotel for Dogs. The dog that played Toto, a dog named Terry, actually got paid more than the actors playing the Munchkins. The Munchkins are mostly used in the movie to serve as another visual indicator that Dorothy is in another world, with fantastical beings like good witches and dancers and lollipop guilds. The Oompa Loompas from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory are another example of little people being used to display otherworldliness. The Twister is practically its own character. It kickstarts the plot, and its role within the story is mimicked in stories to follow.
For these storm chasers, it's the chance of a lifetime, an opportunity to launch a tracking device nicknamed Dorothy that can unlock the secrets inside nature's most mysterious killer.
We were bonded together. We tied ourselves to the saddle horn and we said, "Wizard, take us to Oz."
Storms have existed in literature for centuries to represent divine intervention, emotional turmoil, and change. But the Wizard of Oz popularized the use of storms as a vehicle to physically transport characters. In Gulliver's Travels, he gets caught in a storm at sea and ends up on the island of Lilliput. In Pagemaster, Richard takes shelter from a storm in a library before being knocked out and waking up in the animated fantasy world. A storm brings Shark Boy and Lava Girl to Earth, where they collect Max and take him back to Planet Drool. The Last Flight, a Season 1 episode of The Twilight Zone, features a lieutenant who flies a plane through a strange cloud and ends up in the future. Stories where destructive weather phenomena are used to transport the character are effective because it can be written off as an unexplainable force of nature. And it presents a satisfying story thread when you're stuck in a storm and you think you're gonna die, but then you end up being teleported to a different plane of existence to meet whimsical characters and engage in a hero's journey. The sky in general just tends to have a lot of symbolism in this movie. The Wicked Witch and her monkeys fly in the sky, her threat to Dorothy is written in the sky, impossible to be ignored, and it displays her seemingly worldwide grip on Dorothy, and positioned as being above her, constantly watching her and remaining one step ahead. The wizard came to Oz in a hot air balloon, Glinda floats down from the sky in a bubble, and Dorothy came from the tornado, created in the sky, and her original dream at the beginning of the film was to travel somewhere over the rainbow. The sky is a transitional zone, in between the concrete, grounded reality and confusing, mysterious space. In the movie, it's a transitional zone between Kansas and Oz. You have the pale gray, destructive forest when Dorothy's still in Kansas, then the bright red ruby slippers, the vibrant yellow brick road, and the sparkly emerald city.
Technicolor at this moment signified fantasy, romance, like nostalgic historical narrative. And so if we want to see something in the real world in 1939, it should be black and white. When we think about this kind of a contrast, to me, it plays kind of like going to the movies. Right? It's like we live in our kind of banal lives that aren't so exciting. And then for a little bit of time, we go into this land of color and magic. And eventually we come out and we're a little bit changed, but we also appreciate the place in which we live.
Dorothy's life in Kansas is contrasted with Oz in a number of ways, most notably by having her meet characters in Oz who are stand-ins for other people she knew in Kansas. Aunt Em and Uncle Henry have 3 farmhands working the property, Hunk, Zeke, and Hickory. Each of them play the Scarecrow, the Lion, and the Tin Man respectively. And they each have a line that relates to their character and eventual depiction in Oz.
You just won't listen, that's all.
Well, your head ain't made of straw, you know.
She ain't nothing to be afraid of. Have a little courage, that's all. But someday they're going to erect a statue to me in this town.
Well, don't start posing for it now.
Another aspect of Kansas that works its way into Oz goes back to Dorothy's original I Want song. She wants to go somewhere over the rainbow, somewhere away from the drab, colorless place she lives in now. A lot of people can probably relate to that, a dissatisfaction with the area they currently live in. As she continues to sing the song, lyrics about wanting her troubles to melt away like lemon drops and waking up with the clouds far behind her clue the audience in that this character is facing some genuine struggles. Logical leaps can be made about why she's so unhappy based on the fact that she's living with her aunt and uncle, who she clearly loves, but it just highlights the fact that something happened to her parents. The 2 main things to be appreciated about this song are its initial impact on the audience and its eventual resolution later in the story. When you first hear the song, the lyrics and instrumentation fit together perfectly, and you're already wishing for this girl to get to the magical land she's dreaming of.
Words can make you think a thought. Music makes you feel a feeling.
And in terms of its resolution, it can be seen right there in front of you. Kansas is monochromatic, uniform, and boring. Everything that a young girl itching for adventure would hate.
The only thing in her life that was colorful at that point was, I thought, the rainbow.
Oz is a remedy to this. The second she steps into the world, it's exactly what she's wished for, in terms of its whimsical design and its rainbow color. The rainbow itself has been used in movies and TV to represent a desire to escape, or a symbol of new beginnings in a new place. In Better Call Saul, Jimmy even paints sepia-colored paint over a rainbow, signifying his identity transformation and his declining relationship with Kim. Dorothy also meets Professor Marvel, a traveling fortune teller. We can already see that he's a con man.
Oh, please, Professor, why can't we go with you and see all the crown heads of Europe?
Do you know any? Oh, you mean the thing?
He rifles through her bag and uses a picture he finds to lie about what he sees in the crystal ball. And finally, she meets the villainous Miss Gulch, a wealthy landowner who lives near the Gale farm. Dorothy calls her a wicked old witch, she rides on a bike with broom riding posture, she's accompanied with a terrifying score, and she wants to take and put down Dorothy's dog, so she's immediately and effectively hated by the audience. As I briefly mentioned, non-human elements like the twister and the dog are seen mirrored throughout future stories. The other objects that I mentioned fit into this description as well. The ruby slippers, for example, are an object of desire among the other characters, like the Maltese falcon, and they're Dorothy's eventual ride home, related to characters having the object they need to solve the issue with them all along, like the pipe key in National Treasure and the watch in Interstellar. The yellow brick road is a common object in movies. Into the Woods, Alice in Wonderland, Stand By Me, which is surprisingly one of the more on-the-nose ones, considering they walk on a defined railroad track through most of the movie, and they fit well into the archetypes of the leader, the scaredy cat, the heart, and the fool. These stories use the yellow brick road as the path that leads the characters towards their destination, the destination being the Emerald City. Any movie with a journey to a famed location could have a case for being a reference to this Green Eden. The Wizard of Oz is a super basic hero's journey. Dorothy Gale starts at the first location of Kansas. This could be the Shire, Tatooine, St. Petersburg, Missouri, some basic starting point location that can be contrasted with the fantastical new places the character will visit.
Every story he ever looked at seems to take place in 2 worlds, either environments or states of being. And sometimes it's backed up by changing the music or the change in the energy of the scene to say, we're leaving Kansas, we're leaving the ordinary world, and now we're going someplace very, very different and exotic.
A twister strikes the town, her house is swept up into it, she passes out, and when she wakes up, she opens the door and she's in Oz. It couldn't be more directly contrasted with Kansas. The flat Midwestern landscape is replaced with rolling hills, the plain fields are replaced with whimsical flowers, and most obviously, the sepia tone is replaced with striking technicolor. Dorothy herself has to remark that,
I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
And then the movie basically starts over from here, and this location becomes her new starting point. The spiral center of the yellow brick road is her shire, and she's instructed by Glinda and the Munchkins to follow the road to the Emerald City, where she can meet the wizard and be transported back home. There are a couple of common tropes that are used uniquely in this movie. First, and shortest because there's not really much to it, is the path not taken. She follows the yellow brick road to the Emerald City, but the red brick road encircling it is hard to ignore and makes you wonder where that ominous road leads. Official Wizard of Oz merchandise includes a map of Munchkinland, which shows the red brick road just leading to other houses in the town, but one can imagine. The second trope is don't meet your heroes. We hear about the wonderful Wizard of Oz for nearly the entire movie. It's in the title. So we're expecting to meet a powerful and benevolent wizard, and along with Dorothy and her friends, are let down when he's revealed to be a regular man from Kansas. It hits home that adage, never meet your heroes. And the final one is related to the it was all a dream ending. Did she actually go to Oz? If so, why do all the characters look like people in Kansas? If not, how did she know Professor Marvel was a fraud? This trope extends as far from Inception to Jacob's Ladder to the Thriller music video. These characters also fit into such defined archetypes that they can be referenced all together in other media. Movies like Star Wars, with the everyman going on a wild adventure, mechanical friend, animal friend, series like Severance, with the girl that just wants to go home, and a rule about doing something 3 times to leave.
She has to ask 3 times for you to let her.
And tap your heels together 3 times.
And movies like Nope, with a character named Emerald, a performing con man, and an association to Hollywood and filmmaking, are references to the Wizard of Oz characters. But this is all only half the story, because the Wizard of Oz is based on a book. And if we're going to understand the legacy, we have to understand the inception. L. Frank Baum's 1900 novel, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, was immediately successful. Part of the intrigue of this story relates to how much of it was taken from details of Baum's own life.
One day he was sitting at his desk and looking at his filing cabinet, and the first drawer was A to N, and the second drawer was O to Z, which would be Oz. But that would be an excellent title for the imaginary land.
It's believed that Dorothy was either inspired by a tornado in Irving, Kansas in 1879, which took the life of a young woman named Dorothy Gale, or by the fact that Dorothy Gage was the name of Baum's niece who died as an infant, the story serving as a what-if for the adventures she could have gone on. Another prominent figure in his life was his mother-in-law, Matilda Gage. She died in 1898, and he started writing The Wonderful Wizard of Oz in 1899. She was a feminist who believed that witches were historically used to demonize women. Thus, his depiction of her in the story is as a beautiful and good witch. And the most on-the-nose one, he himself was the Tin Man. Baum created a tin woodman figure built out of metal parts for a shop display, inspiring the character of the Tin Man. His book story is kind of traumatizing. He was a fully human woodsman who invited the rage of the Wicked Witch of the East after falling in love with one of her servants. The witch put a spell on his axe to cut off his limbs and be replaced with tin. The Tin Man's wish for a heart was a stand-in for Baum's defective heart, the missing organ representing Baum's struggle with congestive heart failure that eventually led to his death. But the more well-known association claims that all the characters in the novel were an allegory for the populist movement. In the 1890s, farmers frustrated with monopolized land ownership, the exploitation of agrarian workers, and the lack of power they held against big businesses and bankers, organized the People's Party. So, in American educator Henry Littlefield's reading of the 1900 book, he related characters and objects to groups and figures associated with the Populist Party movement. Dorothy represents the everyman. The average American citizen who lives in a central state, is naive, and is looking to return to a comfortable and secure home. The Scarecrow is the American farmer, uneducated, easily manipulated, and viewed as brainless while possessing hidden skills. The Tin Man is the industrial worker, found rusty, overworked, and dehumanized, being viewed as a machine made to work. The Cowardly Lion was William Jennings Bryan, an 1896 presidential candidate known for his powerful roar with no bite. He supported the free silver movement and was a capable speaker, but without the power to really change things. The Wicked Witch was the bankers and financial powers opposing the populace. Throughout the book, the Tin Man and Scarecrow have debates about whether it's better to have a heart or a brain, highlighting the populist struggle to unite farmers and factory workers, due to the geographical divide, historical rivalries, and differing in specific goals. Even objects and places, like the Emerald City, were seen as a stand-in for DC, the place of power and change. The tornado is the economic hardship suffered by the farmers and political unrest among the working class. The Lollipop Guild is child labor, youthful workers toughened up by their industry. The Yellow Brick Road is the gold standard, which you're instructed to follow because it benefited the wealthy. And the ruby red slippers, which in the novel were silver, represented the silver standard, the way home. The next puzzle piece related to this world of Oz was in the 1902 musical, or rather musical extravaganza, The Wizard of Oz. The play was notable for featuring comedy stars Fred Stone and David C. Montgomery as the Scarecrow and Tin Man. The show ran until 1909 and put on nearly 300 performances. The show saw several changes from the original 1900 novel. Dorothy had a ruby ring instead of slippers, she had a love interest in the form of Sir Dash-em-off Daly, and her dog Toto is replaced with her pet cow, Imogen. There's a ton of other changes. The Wicked Witch of the West is not present, and new characters like King Pistoria and Cynthia Cinch are introduced. During the time of the show's run, Baum wrote the 1908 film The Fairy Log and Radio Plays, an early attempt to adapt the book for the screen. And shortly after the show's original run, wrote 1913's The Tick-Tock Man of Oz, a stage play imagining of Baum's 1907 book Ozma of Oz. The 1914 movie The Patchwork Girl of Oz was produced by his production company and centered around acrobatic dance rather than dialogue. The property works its way into gaming as well, with the release of The Wonderful Game of Oz, a board game published in 1921 by the Parker Brothers. The 1939 movie comes, is directed by Victor Fleming, who ends up leaving to work on Gone with the Wind, another historically celebrated movie to come out the same year. Its failure to make a profit upon its initial release makes no mark on its eventual title as the most seen film in history according to the Library of Congress. Then, we begin to see the aftermath of the 1939 film. The first notable adaptation is 1974's Broadway musical, The Wiz, the Super Soul musical Wonderful Wizard of Oz, which was shortened to simply The Wiz for the 1978 film adaptation. These musicals reimagine the novel characters through the lens of the Black American experience. The Kansas farm is swapped for a Harlem apartment, Dorothy Gale is now a mid-20s schoolteacher, and along with the Scarecrow, the Lion, and the Tin Man, they take off on the journey to the Emerald City. Taking inspiration from the 1939 movie's use of actors like Ray Bolger, Jack Haley, Burt Lahr, and Billy Burke, The Wiz features names like Diana Ross, Richard Pryor, and Nipsey Russell. And both adaptations had iconic young performances, in the form of Judy Garland in her standout role which won her an Academy Juvenile Award, and Michael Jackson in The Wiz, who, in his first film performance, won an NAACP Image Award for Outstanding Actor in a Motion Picture.
I couldn't get The Wiz off my mind. Something about it stuck. I guess the way the basic story is stuck in the minds of Americans since 1900.
The 80s and 90s saw movies like 1985's Return to Oz, and games like 1993's Wizard of Oz Super NES game. Although it never really left the public consciousness, the interest surrounding The Wizard of Oz sparked again in 2003, with the arrival of a Broadway musical entitled Wicked.
The pairing is packing them in, filling the Gershwin's 1,773 seats. With mixed local reviews and very positive national reviews, Wicked raked in this past week $1.1 million in gross sales, breaking the Gershwin's house record since it opened in 1972.
Absolutely one of the best things I've seen on Broadway in a long time. I think it's the best thing I've ever seen.
It's for older people, younger people, people who know The Wizard of Oz and people who don't.
Wicked fun. Wicked great. Wicked fun.
You just felt like you were in Oz. It was so amazing.
I think it's the best thing I've ever seen. This is my second time seeing it, and I already have tickets to come back and see it again.
Cliff, what is Wicked? Wicked is right. Wicked.
Wicked! Best Broadway show ever. Wicked!
Wicked is currently the Broadway musical with the second highest revenue of all time, boasting a $1.7 billion gross revenue. The play's music and lyrics were written by Stephen Schwartz, 3-time Grammy, 3-time Academy Award, and Golden Globe winner, responsible for working as a lyricist on films like Pocahontas, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and The Prince of Egypt. That, coupled with its original cast members of Idina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth, set it up to be a complete critical and commercial success.
Holly said, "Oh, I'm reading this interesting book. It's called Wicked. It's by this guy named Gregory Maguire, and it's the Oz story from the Wicked Witch's point of view." And my jaw kind of dropped. I just thought that is the best idea I've ever heard in my life.
The play served as a prequel to The Wizard of Oz from the perspective of the villain, the Wicked Witch of the West. We follow her journey from self-conscious young student at Shiz University, roommate of Glinda, formerly Glinda the Good, and eventual rise to Wicked Witch of the West. Like any good prequel, the play aims to explain pieces of the 1939 Wizard of Oz that you probably never wondered about, but are happy to learn. Elphaba's green skin, for example, is explained as being a side effect of a green potion that her mother ingested while pregnant. Her sister, who we see briefly crushed by a house in the original, is explained to be wheelchair-bound as a result of their mother eating milk flowers to prevent another green baby, which caused her to be born prematurely and without the use of her legs. Elphaba's biological father is explained to be the Wizard of Oz himself, which adds a whole other level to the never meet your heroes angle. And most notably, all the characters that Dorothy met on the Yellow Brick Road are people and an animal from Elphaba's life. The roguish and nihilistic Fiyero becomes the Scarecrow, loving and naive Bach becomes the Tin Man, and a lion cub saved by Elphaba and Fiyero becomes the Cowardly Lion. This play introduces several new elements that change the story's legacy in the mind of viewers. There are 3 main ones. First, the notion that there are 2 sides to every story. This is even on the playbill. So much happened before Dorothy dropped in, and all that happened explains the eventual descent, or rise, that Elphaba has. Second is friendship. This is present in the 1939 film, just not between anyone and the Wicked Witch. The stage play centers around her rivalry turned friendship with Glinda, which is then torn apart by the third thing, manipulation. Wicked delves far into the concepts of abuse of power and propaganda. Throughout the story, sentient animals are being oppressed and silenced, the tyrannical wizard is falsely presenting himself as a sentimental man, and Elphaba is being destroyed with propaganda pushed by Madame Morrible. So these aspects of the play clearly separate it from the original, providing a separate lesson to be learned, but set in the same familiar universe. Wicked was nominated for 10 Tonys, and the way that the play engages the audience by playing off pre-existing beliefs held from the 1939 film is only improved by the music, which itself has launched the career of a number of performers and maintained its own cultural presence.
There is an Easter egg in this theme. The melody of the Unlimited theme is actually the first 7 notes of Somewhere Over the Rainbow, which is... And the Unlimited theme is... and so on.
The Oz craze continued into the late 2000s with the Tin Man miniseries, which follows DG's journey into the Outer Zone, or Oz, and 2013's Oz the Great and Powerful, which takes the same basic structure of Wicked and uses it to now tell a story about the wizard. This movie is set in 1905 and follows Oscar Diggs, a Kansas con man operating his smoke and mirrors scam. We see him meet a young girl in a wheelchair, and after being wowed by his seemingly magical abilities, she asks him if he's able to make her walk. He admits that he can't and is booed off stage. This is the first example of a moment in this movie where a human empathetic trait is added to a character that maybe didn't exist as much in past versions. Every version takes its liberties with the characters. In the 1939 movie, the wizard is pretty bumbling and embarrassed. He knows what he's doing is wrong, but he tries in the end to at least give each of the characters something that feels like a completion of their wish. In the Wicked stage play, he's a much more definitive antagonist. He's an absent father, a liar showing little remorse, and turns into a full-on dictator. In this version, he's the protagonist that we're following, and since it's a Hollywood blockbuster, he has to be somewhat likable. He's arrogant and brash, but clearly charming. But the scene with the girl in the wheelchair is the first scene where we see that even though he's a no-good con man, he won't directly lie to a little girl in a wheelchair's face. The bar is low, but the bar set by the Wicked Wizard was already low enough, so it's progress. We see him mistreat and underpay his assistant Frank, and then the last important character we see him meet in Kansas is Annie. We know she's important because he doesn't want to pull the music box grandmother killed in battle story with this girl. He acts more relaxed and normal around her, and during their conversation, we learn that she's marrying a John Gale, meaning that Annie is Dorothy's mother. So Wicked established that the Wizard of Oz was the Wicked Witch's father, and now in this story we learn that the Wizard of Oz dated Dorothy's mom. Small world. And in the final moment before he leaves, we get a scene of him speaking to Annie about his hopes. This movie's not a musical, so we don't get the regular I Want song. He just plainly tells Annie that he doesn't want to be a good man, he wants to be a great one. And that he wants to be Harry Houdini and Thomas Edison all rolled into one. This displays both his ambition to be in a position of power and his willingness to sacrifice being a good person to be one of the greats. The other notable thing about these intro scenes is that they're black and white, as a reference to the sepia tone beginning of The Wizard of Oz, and it has a different aspect ratio, adding to the vintage feel and expanding into standard aspect ratio to make entering the world of Oz feel more magical. He ends up running off to his escape vehicle, and his hot air balloon ride is way more tumultuous than Dorothy's trip in the house. The balloon's getting tossed around, pieces of it are getting ripped apart, and his basket is getting stabbed with planks of wood as it flies directly into a twister. We get the calm in the eye of the storm scene from the original, and then he lands in Oz. Upon his arrival, he meets the China Girl, the Flying Monkey Butler, and Glinda, the Oz equivalents of the girl in the wheelchair, his assistant Frank, and Annie Gale. The China Girl has broken legs, and the Flying Monkey pledges his servitude to Oz after saving his life. These characters reference the coy way the 1939 movie foreshadowed the future of the characters. He also meets sisters Theodora and Evanora. Evanora tricks Theodora into hating Oscar and eating an enchanted apple, which turns her into the scorned and angry Wicked Witch of the West. This part of the story follows the same misdirection as Wicked, with Theodora turning evil through manipulation. This is riding off the late 2000s, early 2010s trend of brazen, devil-may-care protagonists with a secret heart of gold. This whole Oz craze sparked by the 1900 L. Frank Baum novel and continued by most notably the 1939 MGM film and the 2003 Broadway musical is more present than ever today, with the release of 2024's Wicked. John Chu's film adaptation of the play, starring Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande, expands on aspects of the world and characters from the play, and pays homage to its source material, both in the form of the MGM film and the Broadway musical. The Wizard of Oz's popularity in current pop culture can be seen by the fact that this movie earned over $750 million worldwide, and ended up winning Academy Awards for Best Costume Design and Best Production Design. The release of the movie caused an increase in streams of the original Broadway cast recording, and the best proof of its success, it's getting a sequel, being released next month. Its original debut, and allusions to it in other media, has cemented nearly every aspect of this story deep in pop culture. It's among the most referenced movie in other movies in all of film history. There are the indirect references, like the tornado instrument in Twister being named Dorothy, and then there are the endlessly referenced songs, visuals, and quotes.
I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
You're not in Kansas anymore.
Not in Kansas anymore, Toto.
I don't think we're in Kansas anymore, Toto.
We're not in Kansas anymore.
Guess we're not in Kansas anymore.
There's no place like home.
No place like home. There's no place like home.
There's no place like home. There's no place like home.
There's no place like home. There's no place like home. There's no place like home. There's no place like home.
There's no place like home.
Goodbye, Dorothy.
Oh, what a world! What a world!
Baby, Maybe we could hire a professional bounty hunter? What a world! What a world!
Follow the yellow brick road.
Follow the yellow brick road?
Follow the yellow brick road.
Follow the yellow brick road.
I'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog, too.
And your little dog, too!
I'll get you, my kitties, and your little dog, too.
I'll get you and your little dog, too.
Lions and tigers and bears!
Oh, my!
Lions and tigers and bears, oh my.
The 1939 movie won 2 Oscars, received 6 nominations, and is one of only 900 films to be preserved in the National Film Registry. This movie saw characters like the small-town girl, the fraud, and the mentor being sprinkled into similar stories, and objects like a yellow road, a blue dress in a basket, and even a natural weather event being turned into pieces of film iconography. The movie's message of "There's no place like home" is a side note to the message that alongside the callousness, fear, and ignorance, we all already have in us the capacity to be loving, brave, and intelligent. The interpretations of the novel that came before the movie and the reimaginings on the stage that came after speak to the nature of stories being influenced and retooled by the era they exist in. The presentation of the world of Oz affords it a timeless nature, allowing it to be understood and enjoyed by people of every age in every decade since its release.
We have a kind of immortality and a great pride for being a part of a great American classic.
And like many other iconic pieces of film history, it'll be interesting to see how future iterations of this story impact narratives and audiences and legacies. Oh my.
I was brought up on the books of The Wizard of Oz, and my mother told me that these were great philosophies. It was a very simple philosophy that everybody had a heart, that everybody had a brain, that everybody had courage. These were the gifts that given you come on this earth. And if you use them properly, you reach the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And that pot of gold was a home. And home isn't just a house or an abode, it's people who love you and that you love. That's a home.